first lesson that he wanted to teach these kids was that the rich don't work for money. And that might seem counterintuitive. And he even said when he was first looking to publish this book that the publishers did not like that because they wanted to change it because it seems wrong. And one of the reasons he says this, I guess, is the rich don't trade their time for money. The rich make money work for them. And one of the first things that he explained after that was he had them work for almost a month, making 20 cents a weekend every Saturday or whatever it was, and he would spend his money, and he wouldn't necessarily keep it. And then he sat them down and then said, if you really want to listen, I'm not going to pay you anything. So then they basically, back that up a little bit. He offered them several dollars an hour. And at the time, because this was in 1957, I think, it would have been more money than what some adults make at an hourly rate. And he basically allowed these children at such a young age to basically take fear and emotion and actually control it and not let the emotions control them, in the sense of he offered them this money to see if they would react and actually hop on this offer to see if they've actually learned anything about working at that rate, and if it's worth just doing the same thing and making more money from it, or actually wanting to learn and not make anything. And that's kind of what he basically helped them understand, is that it's not necessarily about what you make. Are you there for a paycheck? Are you, or in that category, there for some change? Or are you here to actually want to learn something? And he kind of wanted to get a feel for if these kids were actually serious, considering one was also his son. And because of that, he basically allowed them to, well, he didn't allow them, he had them work for free for months, or not months, but weeks. And then because of that, because there was no worry of money, the kids came up with their own way to make money, where they started collecting magazines and comic books that were going to be basically thrown away, and made their own library, and they started making their own money. And they had a little side business where they made their own comic book library, and you had to pay to get in, and the kids in the neighborhood would come and pay to read comic books for a few hours. And they actually were able to make more money than they ever would have trying to work for his dad. They made it into such an operation that they actually hired one of their, I can't remember which kid, if it was Robert or Mike, hired one of their older sisters to basically be the librarian and make sure that everybody paid and nobody stole anything. And they were able to make money without even being there. And they figured that out at a very young age. Like I said, they were 9 when the first lesson was taught, and they first, I guess, became apprentices of Mike's dad, the quote-unquote rich dad. And I feel like one thing that he changed with these kids, and that Robert later understood, was he helped these children to understand and classify money differently than what most people do. In the sense of, most people, I can even confess to people in the middle class and the poor, they look at money as evil, because all they see is these rich people have money and they don't do anything about it, or all they want is money and they're greedy and they don't care, and money's evil and this and that. And I've been talked to in that same way, where he taught these kids to appreciate it for a different reason, and to understand that money is actually power. And the more money you have, the more opportunity you have, and then the more you can do what you want and allow yourself to be more free and can supply wealth for generations, let alone your family and everything like that. And he kind of made them change their mindset of greed isn't necessarily a bad thing. You just got to have the right motivators. And one of the second things that he was able to teach was lesson 2. Why teach financial literacy? And that's one thing that I quickly realized after graduating high school was I was not financially literate. I'm still learning, and even Robert Kiyosaki would say he probably is as well. Because he still says that he goes and learns and tries to figure out stuff, and it's sad because it's a fault of the education system. School trains people to become employees, not business owners and entrepreneurs, and how to be self-sustaining and develop and thrive in a market. And one of the main things, and one of the biggest quotes, which I didn't realize was from this book, but I had heard before, is it's not about how much money you make, it's about how much money you keep. You can make millions of dollars, but if at the end of the day you don't have any of that money to show, are you really a millionaire? And one of the main things that he talks about in lesson 2 with financial literacy is how people are not taught the difference between assets and liabilities, and that the middle class and the poor put money into liabilities that they believe are assets, unlike the rich that put their money into assets. And some of those things are homes, cars, just regular debt, anything that most people use is considered a liability. A liability is what takes money out from away from you monthly. An asset brings in money, and that can include anywhere from businesses, stocks, bonds, real estate, notes, realities from music or intellectual property or anything like that. You have to invest in something else. And that's the one thing he was taught at a very young age, is that the rich have a different cash flow pattern where their assets make them income, whereas for the poor, liability just turns into expenses. And that the poor person gets their money and immediately spends it all on expenses, where a middle class person then gets their salary, puts it into liabilities like a mortgage, car lease, credit cards, and then also pays their expenses, taxes, mortgage payment, car payment, all this. And as for the rich, they put whatever income they originally get and reinvest it into assets, and then those assets then turn into income. So they eventually get their money from their assets, not from their main income. And part of it is just what you put your mind to and focus on. Do you focus on developing your list of assets or your liabilities? But yes, the main thing that he says was financial literacy and the importance of just learning how to handle finances. And the main thing is understanding assets versus liabilities. If you put your money into assets, you will then eventually become wealthy. If you put all your money in liabilities, you will stay poor.